I was looking through notes and I found a passage from Mahmoud Shabestari, and it's called Ikhtilaf Ahwal Dil. So the difference of the states of the heart. And the heart, as you know, kind of like in Chinese, they have words that it means really like the mind. So in Persian, when they say dil, is very much like qalb in the Arabic, where they're talking about something that also has a lot of changes, particularly with qalb, because qalb means change. You understand, huh? It means rotation. And inqilab means a revolution. Revolution means a lot of things in English. It means the same thing in Arabic, Persian. A turnover, a change, a revolving. Huh? So this is Shabestari. I think he is starting, the lines I'm looking at, they are starting at 799, huh? In Gulshan-e-Ras. What I prefer doing is starting in English, read the Persian, come back to the English with each point that he's making. Shabestari himself is using symbolism that's well established in Persian poetry, Sufi poetry at that time being the early 14th century. And so he's talking about something using this symbolism, which we will explore. So Shabestari says, at times, like her drunken eyes, it is rapturous, meaning the heart. At times, like her curls, it is afflicted with agitation. So in the last class, this idea came up about the curls anyway, and the hair. Huh? Do you remember? It represents the divine names. So you may recall that in Islamic thought and metaphysics, God is one, but God has attributes, has qualities, mercy, love, wrath even. Mostly they are gentle qualities, forgiveness and so forth, but there are also qualities of leading astray. Since he is all of existence, everything that we see is somehow reflecting those qualities. And in Sufi symbolism, the hair, the tresses, the curls of the beloved, whether you think of the beloved as male or female, the beloved's hair represent the divine names, essentially, represent the different attributes. And he says, like her drunken eyes, it is rapturous. The drunken eyes mean that in Hindu thought, there's a word which is Maya. What is Maya?
It's a dream.
Yeah, it's a dream, isn't it? It's a dream. Like, so in this way of thinking, all of the world is just another dream of a great consciousness, and it appears, it manifests, and it expands, and ultimately it starts to collapse. It comes into a phase called the Kali Yuga. So it comes into these eons. And one of them starts to collapse, and it's Kali Yuga, and then it collapses and it starts all over again, the whole universe. So it's cyclic. And a lot of Indian thought and a lot of thought of the East is about cycles of time. That's also why reincarnation is appealing in that worldview, individual cycles of birth and death and so forth. In Islam and in the Semitic traditions, there is more the idea of non-existence, something comes into existence, and it manifests, and then it returns to non-existence, and some new existence arises, but it's not necessarily the same. It's not a reincarnation so much as a new, refreshed creation. So the idea of the drunken eyes is that it's a drunken vision. It means it's an ecstatic vision of things. Ecstatic means immensely opening, expanding, standing outside of itself at each moment, so never quite having the stability to be sober, because so expanding so vastly that it is ecstatic. It comes into Sufi thought because if I do zikr or meditation, I encounter this vastness and I become ecstatic. So if I'm a Sufi poet, it's not unnatural that I would describe this vastness as ecstatic. You see? It involves a vision of the world, beautiful vision experienced by the eye of the heart, by the also called sadr, or the solar plexus. It is a vision, a very beautiful vision of expansion, and I'm participating in it. So here again, he's saying, at times, like her drunken eyes, it, meaning the heart, is rapturous. At times, like her curls, it is afflicted with agitation. And the line for those in Persian, he says, Gahi chun cheshme mahmurish kharab ast, yani dil. Gahi chun cheshme mahmurish kharab ast, gahi chun zulf او dar اضطراب است. یعنی خراب است و اضطراب است، نه؟ اولش گاهی چون چشم مخمورش خراب است، گاهی چون زلف او در اضطراب است. So those are the lines in Persian. Lahiji, the great commentator, he says, because of its changes of state, the heart is sometimes like the beloved's drunken eyes. It changes from the ecstatic integration of oneness and presence with God and witnessing God's grandeur to being hung over in the ruins of the world of fragmentation and multiplicity. And sometimes, like her disheveled hair, it is restless because of agitation and distress, which in the world of multiplicity manifest through changing states and the appearance of life's anxieties causing distress. Again, how to explain the range, let me put it to you in a more down-to-earth way of saying this. In the Western world, person says, I have certain character issues, and my understanding is I should go see a psychologist. So I go to see the psychologist. I'm doing smashingly well after maybe 20 years if it's a Freudian psychologist, or maybe 6 months if it's this new, more effective psychology that we're learning about. But either way, I'm cured, right? Walk out the door, I'm cured. Not that simple, is it? We discover the problem, we even discover how we might address the problem, but we are actually caught in cycles of the changes of our minds. Don't we say, see here the heart actually means the mind. Well, what happened? You were engaged, you didn't get married? No, that person changed their mind. They changed their mind. Isn't this a matter of the heart? You see, yeah, but they changed their mind because they had more than one mind. And so there's a conflict between these different domains. Here we're talking about added to the normal confusion of life, there's the possibility of actually experiencing something very vast. So those of you who have done meditation, we could be from any tradition. You were at Spirit Rock, huh? Doesn't have to be Muslim, does it? There's like hundreds of people meditating, many of them having extraordinary experiences of transcendence, agreed? But if you go talk to these people after 10 years, they will say, well, you know, I'm just struggling a lot with self-doubt, or isn't that true? It's not true that they own, nobody can own freedom. You can have freedom to a certain measure, but you cannot own freedom. So that's really the issue. Hopefully no one is owned by slavery. But most of us are owned by slavery to some extent, meaning by the institution of slavery, which is my own mind. I'm enslaved by my own assumptions. I'm enslaved by the habituated reactions that I have to things, to negativity, judgment, undue sense of myself, greed, etc. I could be the slave of these things. So if I want to make any progress here, I'm going to have to reduce the slavery and somehow increase the freedom part of it, right? And what he's talking about here is the natural situation of shifting from one domain to another. And the reason I want to bring this up is, again, the propaganda in a lot of spirituality or in a lot of psychology is that you will be cured. But can we find a measure of freedom? Have you found a measure of freedom with psychology? Some measure of freedom. Yes, I have. Huh? You have? Yeah. What do you think? Fundamental concepts doesn't help to run from something. Maybe I should embrace it. Maybe I should run towards it instead of away from it. So you see, just like in mysticism, there's metaphysics. Here we're talking about psychology, and turns out there are things that work that I hadn't thought of. I thought about running away from it. And there's a very simple thing: turn the wheel and go back the other way towards it and go deeply into it and see what happens, right? So there is a logic to it, and it does give us some freedom, but not ultimate freedom. I'm using this language because I'm trying to look at something that's less known, which is mysticism. And all we have to do is add to our normal model of psychology that there really is a domain of expansive, perceptive, intuitive, mystical experience, that this is not an invention. This is experienced by people from all cultures, and that's what he's trying to talk about here. And he's saying that you're going to move from this domain to this other domain. He's using the language, Persian poetry. If we are trying to understand that language, we have to imagine a divine beloved, like Maya. Maya is sort of pictured. Is Maya a man or woman?
Usually feminine.
It's usually the feminine, because the feminine is creating the world. So in Islam, we would say it's the Rahman. What is Rahman?
Mercy.
I'm sorry?
Mercy.
The mercy, what's the root of it?
Rahim.
Rahim. What is Rahim?
The womb.
It's the womb. It's feminine, huh? Even though in the language of Quran, God is a masculine pronoun, but it's certainly the idea of the mercy is a feminine. The idea of the feminine, the universe is feminine. But you're right, isn't it feminine, huh? And so we have this idea of, that's why you can translate this however you want. A lot of people translate it in the masculine. I've translated it in the feminine because I'm thinking this way, that she is the mercy. She's the creator. Obviously, don't get me wrong. There's no gender in divinity, but you have a trope here. You have a symbolism, and so the idea is just like her, meaning the Maya, or the creator. She has the divine names, which limit things and are associated with multiplicity, and she has unity. Because what is the most vast thing about the universe? And it would be called the singularity. So it's a very odd thing. The thing that is in fact the smallest, it's theoretical in large part, but we know that the Big Bang comes out of this, and so do new galaxies come out of singularities. So there's an amazing thing, which is the most vast thing is not the one with the greatest number, it's the one with the least number. And all the Sufi poetry and all of the traditions of the world are based on returning to the one, returning to singularity. So we have kind of a paradox. Now, the way our minds think is that more is better, more is infinite, and that's not how the Sufi way or most mystical practices work. But we're trying to remember what we're being compared to, because he's saying the heart, human heart, myself, can be compared to this image of the Creator, who has multiplicity and who has unity. In the unity, there is drunkenness and vastness and beauty beyond compare. Because there's no intellect. Intellect is something that separates things and creates duality. And here the intellect is overwhelmed, and there's the experience of unity, you see? So his first line, I read to you. I'm going to read this again in case you have questions. At times, like her drunken eyes, it is rapturous. Talking about the heart. At times, like her curls, it is afflicted with agitation. Lahiji writes, because of its changes of state, the heart is sometimes like the beloved's drunken eyes. It changes from the ecstatic integration of oneness and presence with God and witnessing God's grandeur to being hung over in the ruins of the world of fragmentation and multiplicity. And sometimes, like her disheveled hair, it is restless because of agitation and distress, which in the world of multiplicity manifests through changing states and the appearance of life's anxieties causing distress. We'll look at the Persian. یعنی دل بنابر اختلاف و تقلب احوال که دارد گاهی مانند چشم مخمور محبوب از حال مستی جمعیت وحدت و حضور و شهود با خمار خرابی احوال عالم تفریقه کثرت گرفتار است و گاهی همچون زلف به قرارش در اضطراب و اضطرار است که در عالم کثرت به واسطه اختلاف احوال و پریشانی روزگاری می نماید و آشفته می سازد. So the first, it's a strange imagery, but it's the only way he feels he can try to explain these cycles of transition. So he's saying, just like her, meaning the Creator, who is one and multiple, I am one and I am multiple. We are the reflection of a vast creation. It has multiplicity and unity. But the problem is people like yourself, they say to me, I'm making no progress, because if I was making progress, I wouldn't be having these changes of state. Can you remember conversations we've had? And what do I say to you? I say, oh, that's interesting, Nadja. I have the same problem, you see? I'm not trying to make you feel better. I'm telling you, I have the same problem. I'm supposed to be the teacher. Shouldn't I not have changes of states? No, we should not believe what some people have said. They've said, you will go from here, you will always be spiritual, you will always be in a high state. This is not true. You see? And the reason in the Quran that God made the prophets have some kind of fault is so as a gift to human beings, you see? And God orders, doesn't he say, قُلْ لَا أَقُولُ لَكُمْ إِنْدِي خَزَائِنُ اللَّهِ وَلَا أَعْلَمُ الْغَيْبَ وَلَا أَقُولُ لَكُمْ إِنِّي مَلَكٌ. Right? وَإِنْ أَتَّبِعُ إِلَى مَا يُوحَى إِلَيَّ. Right? So God says very strange things to Muhammad. He says, say to them, tell them, I say to you that I do not have any of the treasuries of God, meaning the secret knowledge of God. I say to you, meaning, and I am not, I do not have any awareness of the hidden world. God is saying to him, tell them, I say to you that I am not an angel. Actually, I am a human being. And I only follow what is revealed to me. I mean, I could give you 20 or 30 examples of this, you see? So why am I reading this? Because a lot of people, like yourself, they say, Abdul Hai, I'm not making any progress. And I'm saying, no, you're mistaken, because you were expecting progress means you don't have. It'd be like saying, why do I have to still bathe? Why do I have to go to sleep? Why do I have to go to the bathroom? You see, I'm supposed to be a perfected person. This is like crazy talk. It's a crazy idea. So the reason I'm trying to read this is so people understand the changes of the heart. And Shabastari is one of the, not all the Sufis are making this clear, because there's a whole tradition of very ascetic kind of practice. And there's also a lot of mubalagha. What's mubalagha? I'm sorry? Exaggeration. Hyperbole. You can read the Bible. It's not just, I'm not saying it's about Islam. You can read the Buddhist texts. You will do hundreds of days in a cave. You will do meditation. You get to eat, one little raisin per day, and see, it's like this is like crazy. This is crazy stuff, And if somebody could do it, it would not be very many people could do it. So the Sufis, they've tried to become reasonable and explain things as they are, because they don't want people to have hopelessness, to become hopeless. They want people to have hope. And so they're trying to explain the truth of the situation. And the truth of the situation is a very strange thing, that the human being who is mortal and will always be mortal can become aware of infinity. What is absolutely finite can become aware of infinity. It's paradoxical thing, you see? The human being who is a slave can also be free. The human being who is free can simultaneously be a slave. So it's a lot of paradox, okay? So that's why I'm wanting to understand it. But we have to he's using a language that we understand with the hair and the eyes, because the eyes are a big thing in Sufism. We too have the eye of the heart. The reason he wants to use the eyes, because the eye of the heart sees infinity. It is experiencing infinity. And that's why he's using, if we were talking to East Indian people, we would talk about Maya for this reason, seeing her vision. Sufism wants people to understand that we live in different domains. I was talking about the body and the heart and mind, how they're different from each other, yes? And spirit is also different from this or this or the mind. It is different from that. It is a kind of special domain that we can intuit, meaning we can use we can find the meaning of it, the spiritual meaning of it, with what's called the heart, which means not the physical heart, obviously means the spiritual heart perceives these things. Well, that's what I'm trying to say tonight to you, is that you should not think that you are not advancing. Now, if you are not experiencing the universe as alive, then yes, you could do better with that. Meditation. As Meister Eckhart said, he found the answer inside of himself. He said to his surprise, he found something that had not ever been born. Well, that's like, wow, tell me more, right? But he said, no, you have to go find out for yourself. And you can only find out through zikr, through meditation, you see? Well, there are some differences. When I was a young man, I was 90% unhappy and 10% happy. The 10% happy is like when I'm falling off to sleep, by the way. But nowadays, I'm 90% happy and 10% unhappy. So there is a difference. So Sufism helps with this, or growing older helps, or doing psychology, psychotherapy helps too, see? Having said that, all I'm trying to say is do not worry, keep doing the meditative practice. You have no other way. It's not philosophy. It is not actually religion in the ordinary sense of religion. Meaning it's not about belief. It is about direct perception. So keep doing that. And meanwhile, don't worry if you're still having trouble in life, So, is it clear? Yes?
I have a question. So you mentioned three aspects.
Yeah.
The intellect, the mind, the body, and what the heart is experiencing.
Yeah.
And the spirit is separate of that.
Yes.
So in understanding the divinity and the infinity, I know my mind, my thoughts, I know my body.
Yeah.
There's a relation between the two.
Yeah.
Could you expand a little bit more on the heart and how that relates and connects with the mind and the body?
Yeah, so the heart here, we're talking about what I said this morning is if I'm going to the heart of San Francisco or New York, I'm not going to go looking for a giant mass of flesh that's beating. So I'm going to the core, the center, the very foundation, the core of things, okay? And there are words in our language, when we say the heart today, we either mean the physical heart or we mean maybe a sentimental idea. This is not about that. So there's a strange thing. This strange thing is, because you're asking about the heart, and to have clear perception, to discover by watching the mind, because the mind is the heart from one point of view. The mind has a range. And here's the range. The range is that the mind has content, and we call this consciousness. We can observe mind. We are able to observe the mind. We cannot see our own eye, but we are actually able to watch our own mind. We watch the mind. A strange thing, isn't it? The mind is watching the mind. We notice all of these things, body, emotions, thoughts. We say, this is amazing. It's like huge, huge. It's never ending. Imagination, we start to get a little sleepy. We see strange dreams that come in and out, just like dreaming, It's illogical, right? We get on a thought that may be very logical because we just happen to get interested. And the whole process is to empty out the mind. So we say, oh, I just started thinking of an equation. Oh, let it go. We can do that later. Oh, I was thinking about some girlfriend in the past, or this, or this, or this, you see. Or thinking about food, thinking about this, feeling this. I hate those people who were driving in front of me the other day. You see, I mean, you have the mind is full of all kinds of stuff, right? So we let things go. Now, by the way, it's not true that you literally empty the mind yourself. It's merely that you observe what's in the mind and you simply replace that. As you say, you're calling a name, aren't you? What are you calling? In Zikr, what are you saying?
In Zikr, I praise God.
Okay, good. So you have something. What do you say? Like, tell me exactly.
SubhanAllah.
Subhanallah. Glory be to God, yeah? So you're able to squeeze in something to focus on. In Buddhist tradition, aren't you maybe just watching your breath? But it's very nice, you could do both. You could say, my mind is so busy, I'm going to try to watch my breath, and I'm going to say something that's like a mantra, we say. Repeat it. And what that's going to do, it's going to cause me to not be on automatic. I'm going to have to stay focused enough that's why it's good if I change the saying also, so I don't get into an automatic thing. And all of a sudden, at some point in your career as a meditator, you will realize that multiplicity has vanished. You will see, suddenly, it's unbelievable. There is awareness, and I am aware of awareness, and it has no content. So it is like the strangest thing. So it is like you have discovered the water of the aquarium that you had never noticed was supporting the strange flying creatures in the aquarium, who were actually fish being suspended by the water. You're seeing the water, but not the fish. And it's very vast. You see, so your mind opens very vast. Your consciousness literally moves here. It drops. That's why it's called the heart. Because you're asking me, what is it called the heart? Because it actually occurs. The event is occurring. Let's call it the solar plexus. The event is not occurring, meaning it has a place in the body. Just like when we normally perceive things, we value the head because our eyes are there, our hearing is there. You see, the person speaking. We are head-focused beings. But actually, the strongest place is here, but we don't know that. So we open like this huge new department. The heart opens, and we become aware of a vast perception. The strange thing is that we don't seem to be in charge of it. There's something inexplicable, and the more we identify what it is, we realize that we don't have a perception, we actually only have an aperture. We've opened up a doorway, and somehow it is and is not our consciousness. But it is what was giving us mind. So we found the source of the water that was very vast, and it was different from the water we were turning on and off at the sink faucet. Is it clear? And the water at the sink faucet had lots of things in it, chemicals, impurities, or this is like vast, beautiful, luminous, you see? So all the spiritual traditions, they cannot all have made up the same story. Now the religious story, they could have made it up because they're often different. This is always the same story. The mystical experience is always the same story. I'm not talking about stories about ghosts now. I'm talking about stories of finding the awareness. Well, you don't have a lot of conclusions that you can come to. Experientially, the only conclusion I've been able to come to is that I am some kind of instrument. I thought I was Mr. Dar, lived at this address and was a boat builder and so forth and so on, but it turns out there's way more to me than I thought. See, so we are identified who we are, our life. That's why people are afraid of death. They're attached to that part of themselves that really is a construct. And the wonderful thing about discovering this place is we are not afraid in that place. Because we know there's no possibility of death. There's only possibility of me dying, meaning the body, these particular biases, particular narrative of emotions. But life itself and mind itself and consciousness in itself, it is not born, as Meister Eckhart said. We see that it always was. In fact, we see that it is not other than existence. See, another thing that might be different from observing it from outside, if you're a cosmologist, we say, well, this didn't exist, and then there was the Big Bang, and there was an expansion, there was gas. The gases became massive enough through gravity to compress, to create stars, to suddenly burst into luminosity, yes? Through compression. Some of them grew very large, compressed and imploded further, created other heavy metals, yes? So the universe has a life and a being, although it's not thinking or philosophizing, agreed? That we know of. But we see life, we see creation, and in the mystical experience, we observe that inside, but we observe that existence and awareness are not separate things. So we cannot easily observe that outside, but we can observe that inside. Meanwhile, the place can be a mess. That's what I'm trying to say to you. You know, I say, well, oh, I didn't do the laundry for 2 weeks, I didn't do this, like, oh, I'm going through a divorce, or blah, 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 blah. You know, all kinds of things could be going on. They are not actually relevant to what I'm talking about right now. That's what Sravastari is trying to say. Don't mistakenly associate one thing with another thing. Don't judge people who seem to be, may not have their act together, but they may be great mystics or great artists of some kind. Agreed? So we don't know. But certainly for ourselves, don't say to ourselves that we're not getting anywhere, when in fact we got to know where it is that we're doing the work. And if we're doing the work to find this special instrumentation, the way to learn about the instrumentation is to use it until you realize how it focuses, how it operates. There are guides. They say, no, it's actually an instrument. I wouldn't leave it there in the sun or in the salt air. I would clean it up, polish it up. You better do this, you better do this, and you can get it working. So that's what the heart is. It's an instrument. We realize there's no other conclusion we can come to, because what we discover is that it's an aperture. It's not ours. The opening is happening where we are, but it is not ours. Whereas, don't we tend to think of our thoughts as being our own, even though they're probably propaganda that we've gotten, but you know, our emotions are typically our own emotions, yes? Our physical ailments or feelings are more our own, are they not? So the heart is a more universal, is something more collective or more universal. The funny thing about the aperture, coming back to the heart, whereas I am sleepy, unaware, possibly irritable, possibly happy, the aperture has a constant stream of never-changing awareness. So there's something to note. Existence and spirit, it is like pure water. The only change you will see in it is in the different leaves that are saturated with it. Or you will see puddles, crevices filled with water only according to the shape of those crevices. But the actual quality of the water, it can only be what it always was.